let's look at how we can pass in a variable number of keyword arguments using the kwargs syntax. The kwargs syntax allows you to pass a variable number of keyword arguments into a function, and it collects these keyword arguments into a dictionary. The two asterisks before the parameter name indicate that it will accept multiple keyword arguments, and you can access the key value pairs in kwargs just like you would any other dictionary. And like with args, kwargs is just a conventional name, but it could be any valid variable. So let's take a look here. I have a function called print details, and it takes the kwargs syntax as a parameter. And in this function, it is going to first print the kwargs dictionary just so that I can show you how it turns these key value pairs into a dictionary. And then I have a for loop that is going to iterate through the items in kwargs. This is the dictionary method items, and it's going to output the key and value separated by a colon. Now, if I were to run this right now with this empty call to print details, it's just going to give me an empty dictionary. And since there are no items being returned by the kwargs.items method here, this for loop will not run. So I'm going to pass some keyword arguments into our print details function here. I'll pass in name equals Jill, age equals 23, and city equals Raccoon City. And when I run this, I'll get my kwargs showing that it is a dictionary containing the keys name, age, and city, and the values Jill 23 and Raccoon City. And then for my for loop, it's outputting our key value pairs here. So I have name Jill, age 23, and city Raccoon City. Now let's look at some examples of using kwargs with some positional parameters. So I have a function here that's called describe fish, and it takes a fish name as the first parameter and then the kwargs. And I am going to take advantage of kwargs being a dictionary. So instead of putting a bunch of keyword arguments with default values inside my parameters list, I am simply going to create variables in the function that uses the dictionaries.get method to check to see if there is a key color, and if there is, it will return that color, and if not, it will return unknown color. And I will do the same for habitat and for fins. And then it's going to generate a description based on these variables. And then finally, it is going to return the description to the caller, which in this case will be the result variable. So I have here a call to the describe fish, and I am going to pass it in the values of goldfish for fish name. And then for my keyword arguments, I'm going to pass color equals orange, habitat equals aquarium, and fins equals 3. And when I run this, we'll see that we get a goldfish is an orange fish that inhabits an aquarium. It has 3 fins. And you'll see that I do not have a space after this period because I forgot to put a space after the period here before I split my string into 2 separate strings on 2 lines. Now, if I were to do something like remove the keyword argument color equals orange here and only pass in habitat equals aquarium and fins equals 3, I'll get the output. A goldfish is an unknown color fish that inhabits aquarium. It has 3 fins. And I could do the same with habitat. I could remove it. Run that. It says a goldfish is an unknown color fish that inhabits unknown habitat. It has 3 fins, and I could remove fins altogether, not pass in any kwargs. And if I run that, we get a goldfish is an unknown color fish that inhabits unknown habitat. It has 0 fins. Now let's say that I did want to set some keyword arguments up here in the parameters. If I tried to put them after the kwargs, it's going to give me an error. You can see the little red squiggly line there. And if I hover over it, it says parameter cannot follow. And then it's got 2 asterisks and double quotes parameter. If you're using a keyword argument and the kwargs in the same function, the keyword arguments must come before kwargs in the parameters list. If I wanted to, I could remove fins. But now I would have to make sure that I put fins in the correct position down here. So I could put just 3, and then I could put in some color equals, and we'll make it a red goldfish this time, and habitat equals, he lives in the ocean now. And if I run this, we'll get the output. A goldfish is a red fish that inhabits ocean. It has 3 fins. And if I wanted to, since it is a keyword argument, the order of the keyword arguments doesn't necessarily have to match the order of the parameters up here. So I could put at the end here, fins equals 3, and run this, and it will work just fine. A goldfish is a red fish that inhabits ocean. It has 3 fins, and it is putting color equals red and habitat equals ocean into our kwargs, and fins equals 3 is correctly going into our fins parameter. So if you're creating a function that uses positional arguments, keyword arguments, and kwargs, this is the order that you would want them. You would want to have your positional arguments first, then your keyword arguments, and then your kwargs. So now let's look at some examples that use all 4 possible parameter types. So we have positional arguments, args syntax, and then keyword arguments, and then kwargs syntax here. And just to keep this simple, I'm simply going to have this function output the different parameters. So name will be output here next to processing data. Args will be output here next to args arguments. Age will be output next to age here. And kwargs will be output next to kwarg arguments. For the first example, I am simply going to call the function. So process data, and I'm not going to pass it anything. And I will get an error because it does have one required positional argument, name. And that is the only required argument in this function. I'll pass it a name data1. And when I run this, we'll see that it's processing data, data1. And then for my args argument, it's simply an empty tuple. Age defaulted to 0. And then kwargs is an empty dictionary. So then I could pass it in data2. And then for some variable positional arguments, I'll give it 1, 2, and 3. And I will set age to equal 30. And I'll give it another key value pair of city equals New York. Now when I run this, we get processing data, data2, and then the other positional arguments get put into the args tuple. And then age is set to 30 because I used the keyword argument to set it to 30. And then for kwargs, I have a dictionary containing the key city with the value New York. And finally, if I were to only pass in one positional argument for data2, and then I could set age to 35, and then maybe city to New York, and I'll create another key value pair that I will call language equals English. And when I run this, we'll see that processing data comes out as data2. My args is an empty tuple, so none of these values went into args. Age got set to 35. And then my kwargs got 2 items in its dictionary now, city, New York, and language English. If you were to use all 4 possible parameter types, so we have positional arguments, our variable number of positional arguments, the args syntax, our keyword arguments, or our variable number of keyword arguments, our kwarg syntax. This is the order that you would want to put them in, starting with positional, then variable positional, then keyword arguments, and variable keyword arguments.